Next thing, I'm on the stretcher getting carried across this field, and then boom, got hit by another one, got blown off the stretcher. So I got
No way.
flown in the air. Yeah, flown in the air.
Jesus Christ.
And the medic had stood on another one. And luckily.
Episode 9 of the Aim High and Achieve podcast. Welcome. Today our guest is Mr. Stephen Handley. He is a former British Army serviceman. He served in Afghanistan and his career was abruptly ended. We're going to hear about that today. Also about his other athletic achievements, which are pretty amazing. I recently caught up with Stephen. He was invited to give a talk to Rugby League Norway's youth programme, where he gave a talk for an hour or so to our youth players on mental fortitude, physical resilience, conditioning, this kind of thing. It was a great talk. We spoke a little bit after, subsequently invited him to talk and tell his story on here. So, Stephen, it's great to catch up with you. Thanks for taking the time, mate. I appreciate it.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks for last time at the rugby camp. And it's good to see you doing other bits and keeping yourself busy as well. It's always nice to see people having little side projects and everything else. So.
Yeah, definitely. We obviously met a few weeks ago at a youth rugby camp where you were invited by Rugby League Norway to come and give a talk to the youth players. I don't know how many of them were listening. I certainly was. I think I think they'd had a very long day training, but you gave a great talk for an hour. So you're living in Kristiansand, which is about a 6-hour drive south of me. My sort of first question is, when you signed up all those years ago to join up with the British Army, did you ever think that decision would lead you to where you are now in your life?
No, definitely not. I mean, Norway wasn't even on my radar, really, to be honest with you. I think like a lot of people, when I thought of Norway, I just thought of cold and dark and everything else. And where I'm living now is actually quite a lot different to that. So I was quite surprised when I first arrived here, and that was 6 going on 7 years now, and I'm still here. So, I must be enjoying it. So
yeah. What age did you join the army at?
I joined the army, I was 18 going on 19, I think.
What was the decision behind that? Because for I remember when I was sort of 14 or 15, for a few fleeting moments, I was thinking about the army. I ended up going to college and I never sort of went through it, but I did have going the army cadets and this kind of thing. But what was it for you that led you into the army at that age?
I think from quite a young age. I mean, I was always active and I always liked being outdoors, and I mean, I did quite well academically. I was fine at it, but I wasn't passionate about it. I didn't enjoy it. If I could choose, I'd always be outside running around or climbing. So then I was looking at active jobs. So the typical fire service, military, that was, the stereotypical options you kind of get given and get talked about. I think it has a lot to say about where you grow up and who you know around you. You're only exposed to the jobs you know and see, right? So I think that was a big factor, I guess. And then of course, 9/11 and stuff happened while I was in high school, so that probably had an indirect effect and planted it into my mind even more. But I didn't go straight into the army. Obviously, I was 18, 19, so when I left school, I knew that I was told that I should get a trade. So I ended up doing car mechanics. I did that for a few years. I did an apprenticeship. And once I finished that, I did a few other bits and bobs. Worked in coffee shops and remortgaging houses, working for a soliciting firm and all sorts of different stuff. And at the coffee shop, I actually enjoyed it. It was quite social, quite chilled. And working in the call center, doing the house remortgages, that really reconfirmed my ideas of that I didn't want to have like an office job or work in that kind of environment, because I didn't enjoy it at all. It wasn't challenging. It was very easy, and I got nothing from it. Found myself very complacent very quick. So
Yeah,
that was
sorry to interrupt you, but I
no, it's
remember
fine.
I had a stint in an office in doing some pension administration, and yeah, it's hell on earth. I don't know how anybody sits 9 to 5 in an office
No,
processing anything.
and
It's
I'm
absolutely
sure every office is different. I'm sure there's some good ones, but again, the environment and the place I was in, it was very just gossipy and all the things, the stereotypical things you think of when you think of an office. It was
yeah.
that gossiping at the coffee machine and all that stuff. So no, that was it, and I just decided, okay, I'm gonna look into the fire service originally, and at the time they were going through redundancies, and I basically got the feedback that they weren't really taking on, and even if they were, they prefer people that are early 20s with a bit of life experience. So I'd spoken to a career advisor related to the fire service, and so then I sort of thought, okay, well, then it's the military, and even then I thought, okay, I'll do the military for 5, 6 years, maybe get out and join the fire service. Then I'll be early 20s, and I will have that life experience, and some, hopefully from the military. And I very much bought into all that stuff you see in the adverts and the TV with your adventure stuff and the survival stuff and all that. And I very much wanted to be that. I wanted to be that person. So that was it for me. So I did.
So when you get the kind of, so you're in the army, and as I'm imagining it, you're doing a lot of drills and a lot of kind of base work in the UK and things. When you get the call, and eventually you went to Afghanistan, and correct me if there was more tours, I don't know. You get the call to go to somewhere like Afghanistan. How is the sort of natural reaction to that going into the theatre of war? Like, this is like the real deal now, you're going into it. How did you sort of process that moment when you're deployed?
For me, it was exciting and good. I think I joined at a time where there was, of course, Iraq before Afghanistan. Iraq was kind of the era where I joined, but then, of course, I had a year of sort of training. So by the time I got through, Iraq was over, Afghan was starting. So I joined at a time where the military was active. So you join expecting it and to some degree wanting it. Really, that's why you're joining. So for me, there was definitely excitement and a feeling of being able to go and do what I was trained for. So you're really, you're up for it. You're not, at least I wasn't scared or nervous or anything like that. You're more curious than anything. I think for me, I was very curious of how I was going to react in situations. You all have these maybe images in your mind, or you play scenarios in your mind. And of course, everybody thinks they're going to react a certain way, but you never know. And you hear so many stories, or I had heard so many stories of people that had done previous tours, because by the time I got into my unit, they'd already done a few tours, and obviously Iraqs and a few early Afghans. So, you're speaking to people that have been there and done it, and they're telling you stories, good and bad, and, you have a lot of expectations. So for me, I was just looking forward to getting involved, really.
And I suppose the training that's what it's training you for. It's preparing you for that.
So you do your training to be a soldier. So that's up in North Yorkshire, in Catterick. And that's your basic training, your bread and butter, and then your infantry training on top of that. But that's generic infantry training. And then once you're in your unit and you're going to be going somewhere like Afghanistan, then you'll be doing more training on top of that within your unit, specifically for that place, that environment you go into. And that's where you start working on more specific drills and skills for that combat scenario. So you'll be doing, all your close combat stuff in terms of house clearances, all those bits and bobs, and then you'll be doing all your mine sweeping. They're not called mines that we look after, but I just say that out of accessibility to everyone else, or not having to explain what an ID is. Everyone calls it a mine anyway. So Yeah, so you go into more specific details and training for your operations.
One thing that's always intrigued me in sort of like the theatre of conflict is, are you kind of working shifts? Would you kind of go and work 12 hours and then come back to the base, to the green zone for 12 hours and then, or is it looser than that? Or is it, how does it kind of work? Because you can't continue, if you're in a firefight or you're in a contact, there obviously isn't a time on that. You could be out there for 20 hours on something, you know. How does it sort of flow like that?
Yeah, so there definitely isn't like a set schedule of 12 hours on and 12 hours off or anything like that. And it really depends on what kind of unit you're in or what your type of operations are. But for us, on the first tour, we were mainly going into areas that were known Taliban strongholds. We'd get dropped into them, and then we would push the Taliban out, and then we'd hold a compound, so like an old either a farm or a house or something we could build up. So then we'd build all the corners up with sandbags and build sentry positions to keep watch, and we would stay there, and then that would be our outpost then. So it wouldn't be going back to our main base. We would be staying there, and we'd make our own base, build it up with sandbags. So as you can imagine, some of you will be fighting, some of you will be digging. Often you'll push the enemy back enough and they won't come back. They'll have to go and regroup and come up with another plan or even run away. And then we would use those periods to build our sentry positions. And then you'll have a rotation of who's sleeping and who's watching guard. And then in the day, we'd be doing patrols as well, patrolling the area. So you'd maybe have half of you out on patrol. So that was a typical sort of stuff I did. And then I also did some like small operations you do where you'd just be a couple of days, or at least it'd be planned for a couple of days. But as you said, sometimes things change and you might end up being out there for a week. But you'd go out and you'd have a specific job. You know, you'd be maybe assisting someone, maybe assisting the Afghan army, or maybe you'd be trying to just get into an area and push a small group out. So there's a lot of different ways you can do it, but for the most part, so Helmand, you had Camp Bastion, which was the main base. We flew into there originally. You get your orientation and you do a few more brush ups on skills and drills for a week or so, and then we were out, and then we didn't go back to Bastion then until the end of the tour, 6 months, you know. So we were just out living in a compound that we built up.
Wow.
So yeah, it was definitely hectic, busy, don't get a lot of sleep.
Yeah, and unfortunately, your career on the front line came to a tragic sort of end. Are you sort of happy to tell us what happened with that?
Yeah, so this was on my second tour. I did a tour in 2009, going in 2010, and that was my first. And that was a busy tour, really busy, fighting a lot. We were part of something called Operation Mostarak, which was the biggest air assault in Afghanistan at the time, and it was a very big combined effort with all the coalition forces, so Canada, America, the Afghan army, all these. So that was a very dare I say fun tour, very busy, fighting every day. We came home from that, no problem, and then I think a year and a half later, we were due to go back out. Within that time, I moved over to a reconnaissance unit, and we went on my second tour, and it was very different, very quiet, dare I say boring. We were going on patrols, didn't get into many fights. We were mainly there to be supporting the Afghan army and the Afghan police, because they were supposed to be taking more control of the areas and taking more of the lead. It was quite a frustrating tour for that reason as well. They're quite difficult to work with. It was difficult to know if you could trust them all. There's a lot of corruption and a lot of infiltration of guys loyal to the Taliban getting into the police and stuff. And there was a lot of instance of them working alongside our guys and then turning around and shooting them in the back and stuff. So
that's almost like modern day guerrillas, yeah, like
yeah, so
infiltrate.
it was a very and even without that loyalty to Taliban, there was also just a cultural difference and yeah, it was very difficult and a professional, massive professional difference. You know, we'd often go to their compound to collect them to go on patrol, and they would say, it's too hot, we're not going out. It often felt like they didn't really care. And of course, where they only feel like it's your country, we're here to, or at least I felt like I was there to help, and they didn't seem bothered themselves, and it was quite a frustrating time. But anyway, just like any other day, we were heading out on patrol, and we come into an area that we've been around this area before, but of course we always try and take different routes to avoid setting patterns and stuff. And this time, I ended up in a field and standing on an IED, an improvised explosive device, and it set me up in the air. The first moment I realized that I'd stood on something was, I was in the air looking at the tops of these trees that were alongside the field that we were patrolling. So I thought, oh, I'm high. Landed on my shoulder. I remember that very vividly. That I remember landing on my left shoulder and it being painful, and then the dust settling. Not really my legs initially, and then it was just my shoulder that really hurt. And then I think as the dust settled, I come to the realization that I just stood on an IED, and I know what that does. I've seen it happen to people before. We go over it meticulously over and over in training, how to deal with other people to step on them. And of course you talk about how you deal with it for yourself too, but most of the training is dealing with other people that have stepped on it. So I knew that there was going to be leg damage. That's the typical, both legs or one leg or even waist. It really depends on the size of the IED. So I looked down, and sure enough, my left leg was missing, and my right leg was there, but it was hanging on by just a thread of skin. I could see it wasn't going to be saved anyway. And from there, I got my tourniquets out, started putting my tourniquets on, doing my drills.
You were doing this to yourself in that situation.
Yeah. So and I actually don't remember doing that. I got told this afterwards. I didn't think I did. I only found out years later, only a couple of years ago, that I found out. I was speaking to the medic that was there, and we were having a conversation over a beer, and I can't even remember how it came about, but either way it came about that he said about me doing my tourniquets, and I was like, I didn't do my tourniquets, and he said, yeah. So
how many were in your patrol when this happened?
I think we were like 10 or 12.
Okay. Did anyone else get caught in it, or was it just you? And then
so we always try and keep spacing for that reason. So if there's like a mortar round or something dropped on you, or of course a blast, that it's going to minimize the damage. Often you'll see, like always see on TV, and they're really close together patrolling, and that's terrible.
Yeah.
Drills. It only takes one mortar round, and it's going to take out 3 or 4 guys. So we focus on this spacing, we call it. So luckily it was just me that got hit on this. So by the time I kind of I think I did my tourniquets, and then the next thought was my crown and jewels. Straight away I was thinking about my manhood, and I put my hand down, checked, lifted my hand up, and there was just chunks of skin and blood and everything all over my hand, and I was just like, I felt sick, and I was like, fuck, I'm gone, and then at that moment my thumb started pounding, pulsing, and I looked at it, and I had a big hole in my thumb. So I was like, oh, okay. I brushed my hand, cleaned it, made sure it was clean, and then checked everything again, and luckily all was good in that sense. And I think by this point the medic had got there. So the medic came, and he started doing his skills and drills are very, very efficient, very professional. Give me my morphine, check my tourniquets. I remember him either putting new tourniquets on or tightening the ones that I had done. I just remember being a lot of pain, really bad pain when he did that, and I wanted to punch him. And then, it's like a little bit of a blur. And then I know they got me on the stretcher, and then on the way out to take me to where the helicopter was going to come and pick me up, because all this behind the scenes, of course, my commander is ordering a helicopter, or a CASEVAC, we call it, a casualty evacuation. He's trying to sort that out behind the scenes. I'm obviously unaware of all of this. And next thing, I'm on the stretcher getting carried across this field, and then boom, got hit by another one, got blown off the stretcher. So I got flown in the air. Yeah, flown in the air.
Jesus Christ.
And the medic had stood on another one. And luckily it was a partial detonation, or part det, call it. And it means that, it didn't go off as it was intended to. Only part of it exploded. I think if it was a full detonation, I'd probably be dead, and there'd definitely be some more injuries amongst, because we had 4 guys, of course, on the stretcher. The medic was alongside me, checking me out and making sure I was, my tourniquets weren't falling off and all that other stuff. So yeah, he had like 8 fractures from his ankle down to his foot. I believe he's pretty all right now. He's back to good health and everything. Didn't have to lose anything. So then it was on the deck, and I thought I was blind. I couldn't see anything. And my mate, the commander, he's still one of my best mates to this day. I speak to him all the time. He got on top of me, and I was saying I'm blind, I can't see anything, and he wiped all my eyes and tipped water on me. It was just mud, a lot of mud in my eyes. So that was that. I remember panicking. That was a really panicky moment. And I sort of said, and I looked at him and I said, how fucked am I now? Because I didn't realize, obviously didn't know I was a partial det at this point. And he looked me up and down. And he's like, you're the same fucked. And I was like, okay, right.
So what was that? Is that like 10 minutes after the initial one, 30 minutes, something like that? Within the hour, let's say, of it?
It was, well, I think the helicopter I was on was by about 30 minutes. Okay. We call it the golden hour. Obviously, you need to be back at Bastion for the hour for you to be for the best chance of survival and stuff.
Yeah.
And the helicopter, I remember hearing afterwards that I had no idea of time in this moment. So everything was quite blurry. But just from conversations afterwards, I know my mate was a bit annoyed that the helicopter took 30 minutes, which is quite slow for our time, because some of commanders in another place they wanted to send out vehicles instead, like combat vehicles to get me, which would have been slower. But I think sometimes there's politics involved. I mean, I can't speak for the reasoning behind that. My commander and my friend seems to think that they wanted to just be involved in this CASEVAC, because sometimes, well, not sometimes, a lot of times there's heavy politics involved in people wanting to get recognition for things and for being part of things.
Okay.
Of course, things they could write up and get recognition for, and medals potentially, etc. So I think there's a little bit of that involved, quite a lot.
When this fucking maelstrom begins, are you still thinking this could be an ambush? There could be people lying in wait, watching this field of devices, ready to, once one gets tripped off, then you're going to come under fire? Are you thinking about something like that, or is it just a case of just get the hell out of there? And
no, well, for me, I weren't thinking of that. I was just thinking of being blown up and the pain. But definitely we're drilled, and we will have everyone will be watching out. They won't all just be focusing on me. We'll have people sorting me out, and then you'll have people facing different directions, waiting for incoming fire or any kind of movement towards that position. So And we were particularly on guard that day, I remember, because we had a sniper warning. There was a warning of a sniper in the area that day, or those days. So there'd been a sniper operating around us for some time. And I don't know if it was the same sniper or if there was many snipers, but I know that a friend of mine got killed by a sniper a couple of weeks after that. I think we actually had some special forces guys come down and work on getting rid of these snipers after that, which they did. So yeah, there's
I can't even begin to think of the adrenaline that must have been pumping at this moment. But when you kind of when the adrenaline, or when a day later or 2 hours later, when you actually feel the adrenaline go, and then you're back to sort of damage assessment, how is that as a feeling from having the adrenaline of it to then sort of sobering up from it?
honestly, I think a lot of this, I don't have to say it's like out of control is not the right word, but everything seems to happen so fast, and you don't. I think it's difficult to just be able to make decisions about how you're going to react. And at least for me, I didn't make a decision about anything. You just kind of go through it and you come out of it how you come out of it. Of course, when I went back from the helicopter, they take you back to Bastion, the main base in Helmand, and then they do the initial surgeries, clean you up as best they can. But then the aim is to obviously fly you back to the UK. So that was on a Saturday, and on the Sunday I woke up and I was in Bastion. And later that day they were going to fly me back to the UK, and a lot of that's a bit of a blur. I was actually, but I was awake quite early. A lot of times people don't wake up until they're in the UK, and sometimes they don't wake up because they've been put in comas or whatever until a week or so later. So I feel like I was quite fortunate, and maybe the way I've coped with things relatively easily was due to that too. I was awake. I didn't lose consciousness even when I got blown up. Often when people get blown up, they lose consciousness there and then, and they go into shock, and then they're not aware of anything, and then they wake up a week or so or days later in the UK hospital. So I think being aware of everything was positive in that sense. So it wasn't a massive shock. So, and I was able to call. I called my mother. Obviously, I was just laying there Sunday, and I thought, shit, my mum's going to be losing her mind. So I asked for a satellite phone and called her, chatted with her and told her that I was okay and still alive. And I've actually my mum kept the journal, and I was reading that the other week actually, and she's saying how I was, cracking jokes and messing around, making jokes about my legs already. And there was a story that went around because I think like a colonel or some kind of high ranked officer come to see me, because you get quite a lot of officers coming to see you, and they sign a visitor book, and they thank you for your service, and some American officers give me like coins and different bits and bobs that I wasn't really paying much attention to. I couldn't tell you any of the names now. One of our fellows asked if there was anything I needed, anything he'd get for me, and I'd asked him for foot powder. And that got back to the guys on the ground, and they all knew me as a bit of a joker, and and that's typical military dark humor. So I heard afterwards that really lifted their spirits a bit. They were all in camp feeling a bit shit about what happened, and they'd heard that I woke up and asked for foot powder, and they were all having a laugh. And I think for me it was important to do that, and to put this bit of a mask and face on for my family and my friends, because I think on my first tour, like I said, it went okay for me, but there was people that got injured and there was people that died. And I remember going back and visiting a guy that got injured on my first tour, and what hit me the most wasn't his physical injuries, it was his personality had changed. He was a bit of a shell of himself, and it was very difficult to deal with, to see. And I didn't really want to do that to anyone that was going to see me.
That's a really interesting point. That's a really, really interesting point that you kind of saw that you had a duty to the people who loved you effectively, that you weren't going to allow that to happen to yourself, because it would impact them probably more than it would, or as bad as it would have impacted you, and it would be the negative thing that happened would then cast a web over 20 people, let's say,
Yeah.
and you that's a really great way to look at it.
Yeah, and I mean, I didn't, and again, I have to stress that these aren't decisions I made at the time. I think that as I've had time to reflect and look back, I think that might be part of why I chose to deal with it that way. And like I said, looking back on the things that affected me, we're seeing people being injured, and perhaps that was an unconscious decision, and for why it was an unconscious decision. So I am not 100% sure, but that's what the conclusions I've come to with that. I feel like that's probably why. And I think sometimes if you stick a mask on enough, it tends to stick a little too, like it rubs. I think, fake it till you become it a little bit.
Yeah.
It's like this or public speaking or whatever, if you wait until you're great at it, you might never start. But if you just do it and get into it and learn, and every opportunity you get, you do it, you fake it a little bit, and one day you'll do it and you'll be like, oh shit, I'm actually quite good at this.
That's exactly what Wilco said in the last podcast. He said, you just got to get out there and learn on the job. And I always say, I say this to everybody: if you never leave your house because your leg hurts, you're never going to go on a run because your toe hurts, you'll never do anything. If you always say, I don't want to go and play golf, my back hurts, whatever it is, if you always say this, you'll never leave the house. You just go and do it, And I think, it's going back to obviously what happened with yourself, and you say putting a mask on, but I would say it was probably a subconscious tool that you were using to sort of handle the situation, and it's kind of like, do you take the red pill or the blue pill after such a massive, incident? You can go one way or the other. You can go one way or the other, and unfortunately, and I'm like you said, one guy you knew, didn't take the red pill, took the blue pill, and so on, and it's really interesting to explore what that mechanism is, that kind of, is it in your character? Is it learned? Is it people around you?
I think it's both, honestly. I think, because I must say that guy I was talking about now is doing amazing, and he's a really, he's doing really well, doing really amazing,
fantastic.
and not just getting by. He's smashing stuff, and he's doing really, really well. So he'd obviously come out of that place, but he was very young when he got injured. He was 19 years old, so he was very young. So. And I think some people also, it just takes time for things to click. Like I've seen people from my rehab days, again, some of them just were in the dumps and in a wheelchair, and you never thought they were ever going to get better, really, and they were going to be stuck. And then years later, I've seen them on Facebook or something, and they're flying. So sometimes maybe it just takes something for things to click in, or they need to find a reason or a purpose or whatever it might be. But I think also, for me, I felt like I had it before I got injured. I didn't think that before, but looking back, I was always quite, not to be big-headed, but I was a good soldier. And I think what made me a good soldier was my mental robustness. I was able to stay calm under stress and think, and I was always on top of my fitness. I always cared about my fitness and being good at what I did. I wasn't happy with just being in the army and just getting by, and I wanted to be at the top of fitness test. I wanted to be a good soldier. I won best recruit in my training phase, where it's just something I cared about, and I think it's something that I'm always been quite competitive. And I think a lot of people that join the army of course, come from different backgrounds, and some people join it because maybe it's a last resort for them, or it's the only option they feel they have, and some of them don't actually care too much about being there. It's a paycheck, and it's something to do, keeps them off the streets, which is fine. But you have lots of different characters in the military, you know. It's and you know, I wasn't best friends with everyone in the army. You meet certain people like everywhere. You meet certain people you click with, and a lot of those other guys were similar to me in terms of, you know, they cared and they had pride and they had an ethos about them that they had values and standards, and yeah, I think that's like everywhere, walk of life really, but definitely in the military you have different types, and I think not everyone is meant to be in the army that is in the army, and I think that is also a big part of the whole PTSD dilemma now. I think the army gets a lot of the blame for that often, and I think if they're to be blamed for anything, I would say it's probably just not strict enough criteria on who they let in, because I think a lot of people that come in are susceptible to getting PTSD before you even go on a tour. Like some of these people you meet, you can see they're already damaged people. They're already. I could have pointed at people before tour, and I probably did at some point because I was a bit of a dick sometimes, and say you know, PTSD, and I could have picked a bunch out and that have got PTSD now before we even went anywhere. A lot of these people haven't even got what I would consider post-traumatic stress problems from Afghanistan. I think they're just the life problems, you know, just an inability to deal with any stress or any you know, hard periods, or what often we just consider to be life issues.
And I think that's kind of you know, my sort of opinion of that is it's kind of built from. It's from, obviously it's from your upbringing, you know, obviously it's from your parents have a big say in that, you know, and that's a really broad sort of spectrum or a really broad question about people in general. But I think a lot of that sort of, like you say, stems from the army being seen as kind of like a last resort, when really it should be seen as like an elite form of work. You know, you're on the front line, you're defending a country. It should be seen as elite, and like you say, the selection of, you know, there should be tighter for sure, I think.
Yeah, it's difficult because of course there's a numbers game. They need certain amounts of people, and if you're not getting the influx in, you need to let the standards go a little bit to get people in. And especially, I think that's probably what they did around Afghan Iraq era, when they needed more people and just let more slip through the net.
Yeah.
But I guess that's a different conversation, I guess.
Yeah, I was just actually thinking that going down that road could go a long time. But how do you? I was looking through your sort of social media just in the preparing for this, and I saw an amazing video, and I just want to mention it, where I don't know if it's your first steps on the prosthetic legs, but
yeah, I know the way you mean.
Yeah. So I saw that video, and it's been recorded. Someone who subsequently later became your wife and the mother to your children. That really was a moment. It really made me think for a minute, and I was kind of like, you know, the journey that you went on from being blown up in a desert to then taking such an amazing thing out of that experience that possibly wouldn't have happened without that happening. And it's kind of like bittersweet almost that had to happen for you to be where you are now.
Yeah, it's a little bit funny because I've always been the guy that says, you know, I don't believe or scoff the people that said, you know, well, everything happens for a reason and all this sort of stuff, and that stereotypical cheese. And then, of course, my physiotherapist that I had after being injured is now my partner and mother of my children, and the reason I'm living in Norway. And you know, we're very happy we built a house together and a life together. So now I have to almost eat my own words and say, oh, maybe everything happens for a reason. But no, it's very interesting, and I definitely, yeah, it's definitely hard to wish that it never happened when all of this good stuff has happened after it and because of it, like the kids I have, and of course, if anyone has kids, you can never wish them away or want to change anything. And so yeah, like it's a bittersweet. It's very, people often ask me if I would want my legs back, or people always ask me these questions, and it's such a hard, it should be a very easy question to answer, right?
Yeah. That's what it made me think, and it sort of made me think. Do you sort of do you look at your life as before and after that
I often
pinnacle?
say that I feel like I was almost like reborn in a way, like it was like it's another life. I often say, especially when I talk about the army and different other days, I always talk about like a lifetime ago, like another life. I feel like, yeah, I really feel like I've had a second life. Um, my outlook on things. I mean, I wish it didn't take me getting blown up and losing legs to see things the way I see them, but I did and I do, and I've got such a better zest for life and appreciation for things, and I think just a better outlook on stuff, and a more drive, more drive. Like like I said, I was a pretty driven person anyway, but I think I'm much more able to clarify and be clear on why I want things and drive towards them. Whereas before, I was just competitive for the sake of being competitive, right? Like a lot of young guys, I guess, in that sort of headspace. I wanted to be the look good and be bigger than everyone and be fitter than everyone, and it was just more of an ego thing. But now I have a lot more reasons for things,
Mm.
probably, and probably part of that's growing up as well and getting older and having kids and everything else. But definitely the time I had to reflect on things, which you have to do, or I think I have to do. There's not a chance I would have been able to go through my rehab and losing my legs and all that other stuff if I still had the same kind of attitude that I had beforehand. Because I was such in a sense, yeah, vain. I can say vain, or just again a young lad that was my world. My physicality and my looks
Mm.
and the and my performance. That was very much my identity in a way. And to be able to reassess that and take time to reflect on why it was important, and what's important now, and what I can do, and why I had the beliefs I had, all these different things. You have to question. The list is endless. You have to really reevaluate everything. And I had
Did you?
wasn't
Sorry,
easy times. Well, it
sorry to
wasn't just
interrupt you.
easy times. It was I went through bad patches where I was fighting a lot, going out to town. I think I had a chip on my shoulder. I felt like I probably had to, again, this is all on reflection. I think I got arrested three times in 3 months, pepper sprayed twice out of those, scrapping with police, and on reflection of that, I think it was just due to me feeling like I had to prove I was still the tough guy and still could still handle myself, and
Mm.
back in battalion in the unit, I had a little bit of a reputation of guys seeing me a certain way, and I felt like I had to uphold that, and it just stupid stuff really. But
Mm.
it took me a moment to sit down and reflect on it, and why I was doing it, and why I felt like it was important, and realize it wasn't important, and all the stuff, all the stuff.
It's a great example of like a growth mindset, of what you've now, how you now have to adapt your life to make it the fullest life you can have, and it I don't want to say it took that moment to spur that on, but that was a massive catalyst in changing your outlook on life and maybe reassessing attitude or behaviors and
Yeah,
things.
and there's been loads of those catalysts, and they've come thick and fast, and they've come in many areas of my life, and I think I think once you're able to do it to one aspect, you start looking at other aspects, and I think you fight it for a long time. Sometimes I think you think you're adapting, but you're not. You're fighting it, you know. And sometimes things aren't adaptable. Sometimes require acceptance and not adaptation as well, right? I think sometimes like there are some things that you just can't. You can only adapt things so far, and you're gonna have to accept some things. You're gonna have to accept that maybe I have to do things a little slower now, or do things a different way, or not trying to force a square peg into a round hole. You have to just say, okay, I'm square now. I'm not a round.
Was there any moments of where you sort of felt real anger or bitterness to the people who put the IED down, to the army for putting you there? Was there any sort of bitterness? I know I asked that because I can be quite a bitter person, and that's one of my sort of weaknesses, is that I tend to hold a bit of a, if somebody has done something, especially work-wise or something, I find it really, I can be quite bitter, and I'm really working on this to sort of let it go. And there's been things in the past with myself, not on this scale, I could tell you, but where I've really been a bit angry about something. Or, I mean, how did you handle that? Did you feel the same, or did you?
There was definitely a lot of anger there, like I said, with all the the fighting and all that. That doesn't come without anger, but I think a lot of my anger was directed, or was coming from her ego and stuff like that. But in terms of bitterness towards people, I never ever, even when I was out there, felt any personal hatred or bitterness or anger towards Taliban. Actually, I never took it personal. I never looked at them as the devil or anything like that. Of course, they were enemy, and they shot me, I shot back. And if you killed one, then it wouldn't be again. I wouldn't feel, you wouldn't feel joy out of it, or happy about it. You wouldn't feel sad. It was just one of those things that you did, and they were doing what they were doing. They're doing what they think they're doing it because they think they're doing right, and we're doing what we're doing because we think we're right. And I had that mindset even when I was there. I didn't buy into I didn't really care about the religious side of things or any of that sort of stuff. I didn't make it personal at all. The only bitterness I felt I had was, as I said before, I really bought into the whole be the best thing in the army. Like be the best you can be, and train hard, work hard, and when I was in training, they used to always say, oh, pays to be a winner, pays to be a winner. And someone was calling me. There was a period there that I felt felt really annoyed and pissed off, that I was like, it doesn't pay to be a winner, because often I saw guys that were not good soldiers, and we call them mongs. They weren't politically incorrect now, I guess. They just were bad soldiers, unfit, and they would just get given easy jobs in the back, keep them out the way. They'd be at the post office, or sorting out the mail, or doing something that didn't really involve a lot of combat. And of course they would have easy tours, and they'd get the same medal as me, and it'd be no
same pension, same, yeah.
And often they could obviously coast through the career and even get some ranks and everything else. And so I was bitter about that. I was bitter about the fact that there were so many what I would consider not good soldiers getting cushy jobs. But then again, the way I got over that was, would I want to trade places? Would I have wanted to have been the guy that got put in the back because he was a shit soldier? And then the answer to that was no. So I wouldn't want to change that either. I wouldn't want to trade places with them.
No, it's interesting, because it happens in the army. It happens in I've worked in a company where being mediocre was rewarded, because the people who were mediocre, who didn't have the technical abilities, obviously didn't have the confidence to express any opinions, so they weren't giving any trouble to the supervisors or the management, so they were just sort of moseying along. And then when things came up, it was okay. Well, we're not going to progress Steve anywhere because he's got an opinion and he's been in the industry a long time, for example. And you see the people around you and you think, how the hell has he got where he has got? And I had a long, hard sort of think about this, because again, when going back to me being bitter and just my experience with it, and I kind of looked in the mirror and I thought, I wouldn't change anything. I wouldn't suck up to anybody, because it's about integrity, and if you go into work every day, be it the army or whatever you do, and you have integrity and you're true to yourself, then at the end of the day, what will be, and you can look back and say, no, you know what, I'm not going to change anything. And I think in a lot of workplaces, you sort of see these people, I call them chances. That's my word for it. It's chances. They know exactly what they're doing. They don't go to the tough jobs. They don't go to the difficult projects. They come in at the beginning and they come in at the end, and they take the glory for everything. They take the glory for the sale and they take the glory for the handover. They don't do anything in between. They're very smart in the way that they can sort of manipulate things. And I've seen these people 10 to the dozen, and I can spot them a mile away, and these chances, obviously you encounter them, but in the long run, maybe it does get you where you need to be. But for me, is about it being integrity, having integrity, going in every day, doing the best you can do.
Your man Wilco mentioned it in the last podcast. He talked about the journey, and for me, it's the destination isn't worth as much if you get there by standards that are not your own. I think I have certain standards and values that I believe in, and I want to hold myself up to be that what I identify myself as, that type of person. And if that means holding on to that doesn't get me somewhere, then I don't get there. That's fine. I'd rather that than disregard all my values and standards and get to the destination. It would be fruitless, for me. I don't think. And it's the same, and that goes with every walk in life, right? Whether you're talking about people liking you or not. Like I would rather people didn't like me for who I was than like me for a face that I put on, or just to get liked. At least then the less people that do like me, at least I know they like me for who I am and they like what I'm about. And it's the same with everything I do. If I don't manage to doing it the way I do it, then that's fine. I can accept it. I wasn't good enough or whatever it might be, rather than cut corners and do it that way. So
post army, obviously, it's a really inspiring story of where you are now. In what sort of projects have you undertaken since then? I know you've been involved with some mountains and some speaking and other things. Just talk to us about that.
Yeah, so I mean, originally after the army, I was trying out all sorts of stuff. I was trying to figure out what I was going to do again. I'm speaking Norwegian again, and really just not really having a clue. So I was straight into sports. I got scouted for different sports. I was doing sprinting a little bit. That was quite a frustrating process because you really need the legs to be fitting properly and everything else. And early stages of amputation, there's a lot of changes in your legs, so you have to change your prosthetics quite often. So I was really hitting stumps, just for the pun there, quite a lot with trying to get the training done for sprinting. So then I ended up moving into powerlifting, and I was actually doing pretty well at powerlifting. I was like #1 in my category in the UK for the Paralympic powerlifting, which is just bench press. Won a couple of competitions there, and that was looking pretty positive. I think I was like #8 in Europe, and I'd only just started. I think I'd be doing it for about a year. So yeah, it was looking pretty good, and I actually got a spot on the Paralympic team for that. But around that same time, it was when my partner had moved to Norway and was asking me to come over, and I wasn't going to be able to do both. So I ended up choosing to come to Norway. And since then, I opened up a business, started a gym here, which I run for 6 years, closed it down last year. That was a good learning experience. Obviously didn't go great. That's why I closed it. But again, it was, if I was going to do something, I was going to go all in, and I threw myself into it, and I don't regret it. It was good fun. I had a good 6 years out of it.
How did you adapt to Norwegian culture?
I'm not sure if I have still.
No,
Adapted.
I'm the same. I'm totally the same.
No, I'm still doing me a little bit. Like, there's still a little bit of a clash now and then, but generally I get on really well. I'm doing bits and bobs of part-time work here with schools, with handicapped kids, trying to help them go through high school. So that's rewarding, and of course I'm, like most jobs, you're meeting people, socializing a bit, and it really helps with my Norwegian and stuff too.
And you're in the best country, I think, for investment in disabled children, for example, less able children, because they really put. My wife works in the school, and they really, the government and the funding really have the resources for helping those kids. I mean, it's like you could be in a lot worse places for doing that kind of thing. I know that for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And they give me quite a lot of freedom as well. There's not like a lot of red tape here yet. So,
yeah,
I'll give you an example. Like last week, usually I have one kid, he's got cerebral palsy, like a lowish level of it. He's not in a wheelchair, he can still get around himself. And I usually take him out the second half of high school on the Friday, or I take him to a work placement in a supermarket just to try and get him some life skills and get him introduced into working. But he had a bit of pain, so he didn't feel up to doing it. And they were talking about just sending him home, and I said, well, he's just going to sit home and do nothing. I was like, why can I just take him home with me, and I'll teach him how to make some food and stuff. I'm really into my food, making, my cooking and stuff. So they said, yeah, sure, if you're willing to do that. And I was like, yeah, it's no bother. So we took him home, and I'd asked him what he wanted to make, and he said he'd never tried pancakes. So I was like, okay, then we'll make pancakes. So couldn't believe he never tried it.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, so I had him home, and I make it into skills for his disability. So even just like dealing with pouring flour steadily into a weighing scale with someone with CP and stuff, and watching the weight. Like I tell him he's got to get 300 grams, and he's pouring it steadily in, and even like another time we were making mashed potato, and I made him peel the potatoes and stuff. Again, maybe that's my military stuff kicking in.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing because these are the things that you absolutely take for granted. You do it and you don't even think about it.
No, exactly.
And you're never gonna. If you're in school, he's never gonna peel potatoes, or he's relying on his parents or his family or somebody like yourself just to take those few hours, do those really things that we just take for granted.
Yeah.
And
so I'm really just
Norway is good at that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's a really good system. So I'm enjoying that work, and I'm enjoying the fact that they give me that kind of leeway to also have my own little methods in a way. And it's obviously my background, there's a little bit of tough love in there, which they need. I think they get away with, or he's got away with, a lot of just blaming things on pain and being allowed to sit down and not do anything. And I can see I picked him up on lying about it as well, which he's done, and he's admitted it afterwards when I've caught him out. He doesn't want to do something, so he says he's got pain, and he gets people allow him to sit down, whereas I haven't. I just find him something else to do.
Yeah. So, that was a big culture shock for me here, was with kids. When I moved here, I had two young kids, 2 and 7 when I moved here. And when I first week or so when I was here, I'm seeing like 5 and 6 year olds walking to school on their own up the road, and I was like, oh my God, there's 2 kids that are out or not with the parents. What's going on, like type of thing. And then And then I was sort of said to a work colleague, "Oh, it's like just two kids walking down the street," and they were like, "Yeah, why? What's the problem?"
School time. Yeah.
Yes, they're going to school. And I was like, well, it's the parents. Don't the parents have to take kids to school? No, it's not like that in Norway. So I was like, okay. And then sort of like go forward 8 years or whatever. When anybody says to me, yeah, but you're paying €12 for one beer. So I say, yeah, but I'd rather pay €12 for one beer. My 5-year-old can go to school on her own,
Yeah.
So it's that's the culture clash you have here. It's like
Yeah, people always bring up the taxes. My friends and stuff back home will always bring up the taxes, but I say I paid less tax in Cardiff, and I begrudged paying that more than I don't begrudge paying tax here because
no, I
everything
don't.
works nice and I don't think about it. Whereas when I used to pay council tax in Cardiff where I lived, the bins weren't taken properly, the area looked rubbish, things weren't kept properly, and I used to think, why am I even paying council tax? Things aren't even the things that are supposed to be getting done with this money aren't getting done. So then it was more on my mind then paying less than it is now. I don't even think about it.
I was exactly the same. I don't even think about it. What I will say is it's bloody difficult when there's 70 million people in a country to run it than when there's 5 million, and I think
absolutely
with
population
Norway,
density has a massive thing to say, and that's if you look at every country in the world that has high population density, they have the same problems. It's just logic as well, right? It's like my gym that I had, it had a capacity for 300 people. If I was to get more than that, I'd have to look at expand or open another location or figure out some kind of scheduling system. That's just on a basic level of something like a training center. You take that and that goes for everything, right? Everything has a capacity.
Yeah, and it works both ways, doesn't it? I mean, we're both involved in rugby, and in it's very sparse population, so you're getting low numbers at that. You've got to really work super hard in Norway to sort of get things off the ground in terms of projects like that. So it swings and roundabouts, isn't it? It's take one for the other.
Yeah, it is that, and then same with things like Amazon and stuff, right? Deliveries and different things. When things are such big distances and the towns are so far apart from each other and
don't buy any supplements from the USA if you don't want to pay DHL 900 kroner to get them released.
Oh well, I made the mistake of buying supplements when I first moved here, and because it was whey protein, which is classed as a dairy product, and there's massive tax on importing dairy, so I got smashed. I think I paid almost as much for the toll as I did for the actual stuff I was paying.
Yeah, it's insane.
It was like 150 quid each, so I ended up paying like £300. Yeah, it was last time I did that.
Yeah, absolutely. What projects are in the pipeline then going forward 2024?
So so since Norway, I've been doing a lot of mountain stuff. Really falling in love with the hiking and the trekking and the getting to the summits of mountains. So that's been on my agenda now the last few years. My first one was Mont Blanc in 2019, my first big one. So I did Mont Blanc, and after that, I was just bit by the bug, and I think I've been doing a mountain almost every year since. And pretty much my aim is to do one mountain at least every year, and just learn and try and get better and build competence in it. Again, talking about that journey side of it. So next thing for me is I'm actually going away in a couple of weeks to Switzerland, and I'm training with a team of all adaptive people actually. So everyone with a disability, apart from some of the guides and the experts leading it. We're doing a training camp, so we're learning skills on crevasse rescue and all these different parts of mountaineering that we'll need. Well, hopefully not need, but could need.
Yeah.
And this is all part of going to Denali next year. So I've been accepted to be on a team heading to Denali next year, and it's a fully adaptive team. So everybody on the team will have some kind of disability, and I've climbed with a couple of them already, and some of them I haven't met, which I'll be meeting for the first time in a couple of weeks. So it'll be good to meet those. And then there'll be a couple of other training sessions. I think there'll be one in Norway earlier next year, maybe around the March time. And I think there's another one in Chamonix also early next year. And then we're heading to Denali in April. So there'll be so that's me now. I'm just training every week, trying to stay on top of things and build fitness ready for that big one.
Denali, I think, is the highest ascent of from sea level. No, I think if you take from where you start to the summit, I think it's the highest ascent. Let's say, because for Everest, for example, you start from base camp, which is already 6,000 meters. So I think Denali is the highest ascent on Earth. If you go from
maybe
base camp to summit.
I actually don't know. I just know that it's gonna be hard.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure I've read that from base camp to the summit, it's the highest ascent possible.
Yeah, I'll have to look it up when I get off this. But no, it's going to be definitely a massive challenge. It's going to be the hardest thing that I've done so far. I just done Kilimanjaro just before the summer in March. So that was the highest I'd been so far. That was 5,800 meters. But it was technically it was pretty easy. It's just it's a trek, you know. But the last 2 days were tough, like long days, like little sleep, a lot of walking. So it's definitely not easy, but it's, you know, it wasn't insane. I think
How did the altitude affect you?
I was pretty okay. I got to, I don't know, maybe like 5,200 or something, and I was sick, but I was just sick once, and then I was fine. I didn't have any headaches or anything. I think mostly that was down to exhaustion and lack of sleep. We obviously left at 1 o'clock in the morning and I didn't sleep until then. Tried to, but excitement and nerves and everything. And the timing, trying to go to sleep at 5 in the evening and stuff. I just didn't happen. So I think I was just pretty tired. And yeah, I remember we were going up, you know, pretty fast, overtook quite a lot of people and was feeling good. And then I started feeling really sluggish, just felt really slow. And I was a bit like, oh, I feel like I don't have any energy. So I stop and eat something. And then as soon as I ate something, I just spewed it straight up, come straight out. And I think I took another bite, was sick again. And then all of a sudden, it was like a wave just lifted over me and I felt much better again. And I was like, oh, okay, that was that. And then I finished the rest of my snack and had some water and we just cracked straight on. And that was the last problem I had. I didn't have any problems then at the top. So, but that was a big part of that, was testing out the altitude. So again, even that was the thinking behind that, was planning for Denali as well. And after that trip, then actually I had the phone call from the guys on the team saying that if I was still up at Denali, I was on the team. So yeah, so it was cool.
So you're not too far to 7 summits then, yeah?
Pretty far. I mean, I've only done one.
Okay.
So I've only done. I mean, if I do Denali, that'll be second. I mean, I never like to take any mountain for granted. You know, I think the mountains, I respect them too much. I never want to assume that I can make it to the top of any mountain. So much can happen, you know, there's weather and there's so much out of your control. All I can do is turn up and do my best and push myself like I usually do, and you know, and do what I can. Everything else is out of my control, really. But
because Mont Blanc is not one, is it? Elbrus is Europe's peak,
Elbrus is Mont Blanc's it used to be, I think, because
that's what's confused me.
This is the continental Europe now. Is the top of continental Europe, but no, it's but it's a great mountain to do, Mont Blanc. I really enjoyed that one. It's one of my favorite ones that I've done so far.
Yeah, a friend of mine, we were talking a few years ago. He went. I don't know if he did Mont Blanc, but I know he did some other peaks in the Mont Blanc Massif. and we were looking at it, and I was trying to figure it out. I had some other commitments at the time, but yeah, I mean, it's that's definitely on my radar. Elbrus, I've been looking at as well. It's just time, isn't it, mate? Just time and money, and just getting things organised. And
there's a time for everything, right? And it's like I'm not trying to kick the ass out of stuff now or force things either. Like people always ask me, what's typical stupid question is always, Everest next. Then and it's like that's not even in my horizon. It's not even something I'm thinking of. I'm just taking one thing at a time, trying to enjoy it as much as I can, trying to learn as much as I can, and I'm not thinking too far ahead of mountains. And yeah, I think this. I mean, it might be possible that I'll end up going towards the 7 summits just because the team that I'm climbing with, they're called Adaptive Grand Slam, and it's headed up by an ex officer from the British Army who is paralyzed in his arm. He got shot in the shoulder. He's got paralyzed arm, and he started this organization. And the goal behind it was to try and get the first adaptive Grand Slam. And for those that don't know, the Grand Slam is the 7 summits, which is the highest mountain on each continent, plus the North Pole and the South Pole. That's the Explorers Grand Slam. And I think he's himself, he's led teams up many of them, and he himself has done all of them but one now. I think he's got the one in, is it Carsten's Pyramid or
okay.
Like in Indonesia. I think he's done the North Pole, South Pole, Everest. He's done all of them. That's the last one, and he's just had difficulty getting access to it because of the political dramas they have there. They don't allow visas and stuff often, so he's had some issues getting there to do that. But once he's done that, then he'll be the first adaptive Grand Slam participant. So yeah.
It's great. It's great to see these sort of projects from people, who've had setbacks, and they sort of don't let it, much like yourself, don't let it stop them. Just adapt. Keep the mental fortitude. Keep busy. It's brilliant. I mean, I've got a quad injury now. I've torn my quad muscle. And that's. I was thinking, I mean, I was a bit pissed off, and I'm thinking, there's nothing, just get on with other things. And it's interesting to how sort of injuries, can either hold you back or can open up new avenues, So I'm thinking, okay, if I can't run as much, I'm going to go swimming 3 times instead or something. I think it's important you don't sort of, just let it get you, you keep going.
Yeah, there's always things to work around and things to do, and you change for the better so much. And often we've got so many weaknesses as well that it could give us a good chance to work on those for a bit as well. Things that we've neglected, and there's always stuff you can work on, always. So I think I've never had a year off training. Even the year I got injured, I was back in the gym, weeks after my injury. I was actually doing, again, I saw my mother's journal that I was trying to do dips and stuff on the side of the hospital bed, and trying to stay in shape and do stuff. Wow. And I think I remember asking to get down to the gym in the hospital, but it was like a physio gym, so I couldn't wait to get physio, just because as soon as they'd finish my physio session, I'd be on the weight test and getting straight on them. Wow. And so I think I was having a conversation because in the school I'm working at actually the other day, and they were talking about phases of their life, and they were talking about phases when they've been in great shape or phases they were in shape and stuff like that. And then they sort of looked at me and said, "Oh, well, have you ever been like, have you felt like not, or have you been in good shape, or have you been in bad shape?" And I was like, I've always been in shape. I've never not trained, so I haven't had one of those phases. I've always, since I was 14 years old, I've trained. It's just at this point, it's just a habit that I do. It's not even something I'm motivated to do that much anymore, so to speak. Or if I have motivated periods, then maybe I train a little bit more intensity and everything else. But generally, I just go through the motions of training now. It's such a habit.
Do you think that physical, sort of being physically fit, has almost put your mind into like autopilot, and that you've not had you've always had that, and they say healthy body, healthy mind. You've always had that as your base, your fit body, and sort of your mind's just followed it. Rather than, let's say, if you're not fit, if you're not working out, if you have then the catastrophe that you had, and let's say you didn't have that physical fitness to fall back on, that could go another way.
Fitness wins, in my opinion. Fitness wins. I think I've always 100% believed that being fit helps you mentally. Obviously back to the military days, that being fit enough to be able to make the correct and fast decisions, deal with stresses, carry people if you need to, if you're out of breath and tired and generally struggling running across a field under fire, and then having to make decisions as well, and count how much ammunition you've got left, and give a report to your commander, collect information. You can't do that if you're hanging out and blowing out your ass, and trying to gather this information and try and make a correct decision, and give correct information. It's very difficult to do, and I think a lot of mistakes are going to happen. And I think I don't like separating mental health and physical health. I think they are the same. I think they both fit into each other. I think both affect each other. If you're bad physically, you'll be bad mentally. And if you're bad mentally, you will be bad physically. You will. If you're bad mentally, the stress and all the other sides of it that creep into your body will show. It'll come. The tension, the everything. It's shown that the stress can slow down your metabolism and induce overeating and all this other stuff. All that's just mental stuff, and it's going to have an effect.
And if you're unfit, unhealthy, it's a massive snowball effect. You don't sleep properly, you wake up feeling like shit, you're in a bad mood, you're snapping at people, you don't do your job properly, you're not developing your career, you're not, it's like you say, that's a great way to put it. They're both don't think of them separately, think of them as one and the same. It's really true.
No, it's not even just that. Like, I look at health as multifaceted. I think you have social health, you have mental health, physical health, you have financial health. It's a multifaceted thing, right? Like, you need to have all these areas. You don't have to be winning in all of them, but you have to have some kind of grasp on them all to be truly healthy, to be a truly healthy person. You need that, like, because don't get me wrong, you could be mentally tough and mentally fit, but if you're like zero in on those two things completely, your social health might not be that great. You might not be being the best dad or the best family member, because you're being quite selfish and focusing on that. And some people need that for a period if they're going to accomplish crazy things. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but I think there should be a period for it, and then you can't go through your whole life like that. Fair play to people that are going to do that and accomplish some insane stuff, and they need that space. Like, you see it all the time. You see your insane athletes that seem a bit weird and seem a bit crazy because that's what they've done. But you guarantee their social health and everything else can't be that good because the way
Tiger Woods. Tiger Woods is a classic example, I think.
There's so many. I even look at people like Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, right? I love the guy. I think he's amazing. He's inspiring. Seems like such a good guy, but he is so busy. He's doing so much stuff. There's not a chance that he can be around his kids that much, that often. He's zipping around so much. Something's got to give somewhere, right? There's got to be something suffering somewhere.
I'll ask him when he comes on the podcast.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Yeah, I'll get to the bottom of it and find out. But Stephen, I'm conscious of the time, mate, and it's been absolutely amazing. What an inspiring story, and all the best for everything going forward, mate. It's been great.
Yeah, I appreciate it. It's been great being on and getting a chance to chat and again learn and grow through my public speaking and everything else. So now it's back to putting the kids to bed.
That's one thing you're going to try your hand at now, a bit of speaking.
Yeah, so I just recently did a presentation. It's something I've been thinking about for a while. So I threw my hat in and did one the other day. It went pretty well, and I've got a few others off the back of doing that as well. So I think it was quite fun. It was a good little buzz and great feedback from it, and it seemed to help a lot of people too.
Mm.
So of course that's always a nice feeling. And
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, it was just, I think I was really nervous about it before. It was really nervous and anxious, and I think whenever you get that kind of feeling, you know you're doing something right in a way. Yeah, you're in the right place.
Yeah,
When you're
absolutely. Just
having
say,
conversations with yourself leading up to it about, oh, maybe I shouldn't do it. Maybe I should tell them I can't do it. Or same as when I'm on the mountains. Often I have these conversations with myself saying, "This is stupid. You shouldn't be doing this. You don't have to be doing. You know that you're an amputee. Just go sit down." Like I have
yeah,
these. I don't just walk up these mountains. You know, I have these conversations with myself saying, "This is terrible. This is stupid. I need a break. I need to." And then of course I get through it, and at the end, I think that's when you know you're in the right place and you're doing the right stuff. Is when you're having these conversations with yourself and you're
it's going
challenging
out.
and
It's going out your comfort zone. That's basically it. Is putting yourself in situations where you're terrified, you're nervous, you're anxious. And what you find is that once you get through it, you come out the other side. You grow a little bit, 0.1%. You grow 0.1%, and you just
yeah,
add all these little wins on to all these sort of things outside your comfort zone. I'm a bit the opposite in the mountains when because I go a lot on my own a lot, and I sort of have quite. I'd say I'm a bit on the when it's getting a bit sketchy is kind of what I need because I'm a bit of not an adrenaline junkie at all, but I kind of I love that kind of side of it. So
mm,
I'm more nervous when I'm doing something like this. For example, this podcast, way out of my comfort zone when I
yeah,
started with it, way out of it. And I was like, oh my God, how the hell am I ever going to get Wilco Van Rooyen on? There's no
yeah,
chance. He's been in a film, he's climbed the 7 summits, he's done this, and he's on episode 8, you know?
yes.
And when you before you start, you think there's no chance.
Well,
And
it's
then
like
all
they
of a
say,
sudden,
you're not going to catch a wave if you're not in the ocean. You know,
yeah,
you need to be in it to catch one.
yeah, yeah.
So that's it.
And little things come off like off the back of the Wilco one. I've got another big one lined up, hopefully. So it's like with yourself, you do one talk, somebody hears it, you get an offer to do another talk, you talk, somebody else hears that one, and then before you know it, you're actually in the destination that you manifested to be in, and
Yeah.
it's going out the front door, get yourself out there, feel nervous, feel scared, go
So
and do it, get
like I
home and
said,
have a beer at the end.
fake it till you become it.
Yeah, learn on the way. So, Stephen, it's been tremendous, mate. So I'm going to bid you farewell. Love to the
Cheers,
family.
mate.
Good luck with everything. We'll stay in touch.
Yeah, have a
Yeah,
good weekend, and I'm no doubt see you at another rugby thing anyway. So
yeah, you certainly will, mate. Thanks a lot.
catch you there. Bye, mate.
Bye-bye. Thanks for listening to the podcast. Please like and subscribe on your podcast platform. It makes all the difference. And we'll see you on the next one. Bye.